What's going on, everybody? All right, the last day of 2025 is upon us. I want to take a moment to again thank everybody. This channel revolves around your participation. If you do not respond to my questions to you on Mondays, if you do not ask me questions for Wednesdays, if you do not submit card pickups for the Midlife Community Show and Tell, this is a completely different channel. This channel is a little bit different than others where it does depend on all of you. So everybody out there who during the year has left a comment, has submitted a question, has submitted a pickup, whatever it is that you did, I appreciate you. Genuinely, I appreciate you. It was so much fun meeting many of you at Strongsville and at the National and at local card shows, people that have reached out to me. It means a lot, and it is vital for this channel to continue on. So with that said, remember, if you have a question for an upcoming episode, ask it down below. By asking it down below, it allows this Wednesday Q&A to continue to live on. There are going to be weeks that people will ask questions that maybe you're not interested in. Maybe it's a topic that you don't like. Maybe it's a topic that has hobby drama or some of the recent chaos and how to navigate through the minefield ahead of us. That doesn't mean you have to listen to every single question. Pick the questions that you like, focus on those, listen to those parts. But I feel it as an obligation and I feel as an honor to be able to answer each and every question. If you've asked a question and it's not yet been answered, I do have an ongoing list. Trust me, I will get to the questions as it seems fit, depending on what's happening in the dynamics of the card community. So with that said, thank you again. Have a safe night tonight out there on New Year's Eve. It can be a little bit sketch to say the least. And let's take a look at our first question here.
This one says, here's a future question for a show. Let's say you have been appointed to be the CEO of Collector's Universe with the major task of figuring out how all three brands can coexist and how to make sure each branded slabbed cards moving forward have equal value to each other. How would you handle this merger and the inner workings?
This is a great question, and this is a great situation because now that I'm CEO of PSA, I am rich, which is fantastic, which is a far cry from my current situation. I think that, Collectors Universe, Collectors Holdings, whatever you want to call them, they've got three grading companies now. They've got PSA, they've got SGC, and they've got Beckett. And when you look at those three options, to me, they should not continue to live. Again, you're asking me as CEO, what would I do? I believe that each of those companies brings something unique to the table. What PSA has long been known for is sort of like the umbrella grader. They are known for grading vintage. They are known for grading modern. They are known for grading everything in between. I would kind of leave them as is. I would have them continue to do what they're doing. If you want the umbrella option, go with PSA. If you are SGC is something that you like, I would continue to leave the black insert, the tuxedo look. And what I would do with SGC is I would make them vintage only. I would make them prior to 1980. Anything from pre-war to the beginning of cards all the way to 1980 is all that they grade. Let them specialize there. And take the PSA graders that they stole. Because when PSA took SGC graders, which they admit that they took SGC graders, they admit that one of the reasons, well, we'll get into that in a minute. But when SGC was purchased by PSA, shortly thereafter, they went to the employees and they said, do you want to continue at SGC or do you want to grade under the PSA brand and be a PSA employee? How do I know that? Because that's what all of the employees told us that at the National. All the people working there said, yeah, they came and they asked us, we had a choice on what we wanted to do, stay with SGC brand or go over to PSA brand. And obviously a lot of them went over to the PSA brand. How do I know that? Because it went from a 5 to 10 day turnaround to now it's like a month and a half. And so they lost graders. And I've seen responses from the customer service department. And it says, we have a much smaller number of graders. We have a similar number of submissions, so we're backed up. So clearly, people went from the SGC grading shirt and took off their black and white shirt and put on their red shirt with the white and blue logo, red, white, and blue logo on it down the hall. So what I would do is I would reinstate them. I'd say, whoa. It's not SGC versus PSA. It's not PSA or SGC. It's what's best for the company. So maybe you have some graders that grade under the PSA brand and sometimes they grade under the SGC brand. But I would not pillage and take and steal all of the best SGC graders and bring them over to PSA just because the profit margin is higher. If I am in charge, what I would do is I would let SGC continue to do what they're doing. I would get rid of TCG grading. I would get rid of modern grading, and I would focus all of the efforts on vintage grading. I would also change the label. I would change the label of all three brands, and I haven't gotten to Beckett yet, but I will in a second. I would change the label to say SGC by PSA or SGC by collectors and PSA by collectors and BGS by collectors. And what that would do is it would bring some uniformity. I would make all of the flips the same, the difference being what the label has as the grader. So instead of the PSA lighthouse, you have a PSA lighthouse, you have an SGC lighthouse, you have a BGS lighthouse. I would create uniformity in the flips. And they would all have the Collector's Universe stamp on them. They would have the individual brand. I would have collectors come out and say, with the flip, with the uniformity, they are part of us. Right now, it feels like, yeah, they're boutique over there. But what we really want you to do is send stuff into PSA because that's where we're putting all of our resources. That doesn't show that you care about the label. It doesn't show that you care about SGC when you steal all the graders and you slow down the turnaround times. That's what that is doing is it's saying this is inferior. This is our value brand. It's not our premium brand. And that's what they want. But you're not asking me what the current people want. You're asking me what I would do. So SGC would be vintage only. It would be prior to 1980 only. It would be no TCG. It would be sports cards and non-sports cards only. And I would make sure that I have some graders that could flex between PSA and SGC down at the Florida Boca Raton offices, where what they could do is when SGC is slowed down, you flex them over there. And you say, but the grading standards are different. I understand that. But the rubrics are going to be different. The grading sheets are going to be different. If you took these people from SGC graders and you turned them into PSA graders, there was an adjustment. So I'm just saying utilize them in both capacities. My humble opinion. The third thing I would do, obviously with BGS, to me, some people want the subgrades. Some people, to me, Beckett is a company that has done okay with TCG, but they've always kind of done the best with patch cards and the thicker cards because they have the thicker slab. And people some people want the subgrades. So what I would do is it would be, again, you have the flip, which matches the other ones. The difference being what the lighthouse is. It'd be a lighthouse with BGS. It would be BGS by collectors. It would be a focus. I would steer people towards patch cards and thicker cards, RPA type things, flawless cards, immaculate cards, the ones that are a little bit thicker. And I would phase out some of the extra options with Beckett. I would get them to sort of focus on some of that stuff. Not a lot of people at this point are grading vintage with Beckett. I would probably have Beckett BGS grading at this point. And this is the part that some people that are Beckett fans won't like. I would probably say Beckett is going to be 1980 and after, maybe even 1990 and after. And it's for the people who want subgrades. And they have a grading authentication. I would keep that intact. I would allow them to continue to be grading autograph authenticators. But the flip would be uniform. The difference being the lighthouse. It would be Beckett by collectors, and it would be much more uniform. And I would show that I actually care by redoing the registry and including all of them. If you have cards you could have a PSA only registry, an SGC only registry, a BGS only registry, and a combined registry. And you say, man, that'd be a lot of work. Oh, trust me. They have more than enough resources with the amount of cards that they're grading, the amount of money they're bringing in. They could absolutely make that happen. I have enough database design knowledge to be dangerous. But when you have states that are taking, 8 different databases and merging them all into one database, they could 100% make this happen. So that's what I would do. Will they do it? No, they won't. Why not? Because they want PSA to be the premium brand. They want PSA to be the brand that in their eyes, the premium brand. Not my eyes. In their eyes, they want that to be the premium brand. They're going to charge more. They're going to offer things through PSA that you can't get through the others, because then they can upcharge you over there. Then they can, charge more for the grading there. They don't want a combination. They want a boutique for BGS. If you really want subgrades, I guess you can send it down there. If you really want the black tuxedo look, I guess you could send it down there. They're going to streamline those and strip them down. They're going to cut back the staffing, and they're going to put as many resources towards PSA as they can. That's what I believe they're going to do. That's not what I would do, because at a certain point, I know it's all about the profit. Trust me, I know. I know that it's all about the bottom line. I understand. It's all about them preparing to go public. I fully get all of that. But at some point, you cannot just completely turn your backs on all the people who are SGC fans and all the people who are Beckett fans by just absolutely stripping those companies as soon as you buy them and putting all the resources into PSA. You can't do that and expect to carry goodwill. You have to at least pretend like you care about the hobby and you care about those collectors and you don't only care about the PSA label. But that's not what's going to happen. So I'm not predicting that's what's going to happen. You asked what I would do. What I would do is change the flips, stop stripping the resources, allow all three to coexist, but set some parameters on what they grade, which would allow more, streamlining, which would create more efficiencies, but would allow collectors to feel like it's a brand that they hadn't turned their backs on.
This one says, awesome video as always. I hope you and your family had a wonderful Christmas, and now we gear up for 2026. Question, is there a point, and if so, at what point do you not buy a card online, but rather in person? Is there a price threshold? Take your T206 Walter Johnson hands at chest, for example. Besides friends like Ash, CIA, and other notable auction houses, is there a cutoff for eBay in your mind in regards to price? Is there a lack of trust that coincides with a certain dollar amount in your opinion? We never know when or where we're going to come across the one. I don't know if I'm asking this question right, but thank you, Greg. Happy New Year.
All right. This is a great question, and it's a question that is super timely for me. Um, there are a couple of cards that I have tried to create a savings account where a portion of whenever I sell something, a portion of my monthly budget, I have been piling into this secondary account. And it's sort of my goal card, my grail card account. That's an idea that my buddy Darren, returned to collecting, suggested a couple of years ago. And I'm finally trying to start taking that seriously. What I did the last couple of years is that became my Strongsville budget, and that became my national card budget, card show budget. And then I just emptied the account and brought that with me to those shows. What I'm trying to do, trying being the key word, is I'm trying to actually set a massive card budget, because there are 2 or 3 cards that I would really like to acquire that, quite frankly, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to afford, because I keep getting sidetracked in my goals to accomplish big purchases. And there was a card that popped up the other day. It was a 5-figure card. And I don't have 5 figures in my card account. I don't have 5 figures in my goal card account. It would have been a card where what I needed to do was borrow against my future card money and purchase a card and then have to sell a bunch of stuff to pay myself back. That's what I would have had to do. And I showed it to a few friends, and they're like, dude, that's an amazing card. You got to get it. And I showed it to another friend. He said, that card is sweet. You won't regret it. And then I sent it to my dad. And my dad, being Mr. Practical, said, that's a lot of money to spend on a card that you haven't even held in your own hands. And I was like, that's a good point. That's a really good point. I haven't even seen it. I haven't even held it. I haven't been able to inspect it other than from pictures. And at that moment, I was like, I can't do it. I can't pull this card off, because I need to be able to look it over. This is too much money. So then I started thinking about my Cobb, which is the biggest card in my collection, which I bought at the National. I paid $5,000 for it. And when I bought that Cobb, I thought, I was thinking back to it. When I bought that, would I have bought that card if I wasn't in person with it at the National? And I don't know if I would have. And then I started thinking about, well, what are some of my other big cards, like my Walter Johnson Hands at Chest, which is over a $2,000 card? Would I have been able to buy that if I didn't see that in person at the National? And I started realizing, of all my biggest cards, my Cobb T206, my T206 Cy Young, my T206 Walter Johnson cards, my Ernie Banks rookie card, almost all of those were in-person purchases. And I started thinking, well, what's the biggest purchase I've made that wasn't in person? And it's about $1,000. And so I don't know the answer. I want to give advice, but I want to give advice that I follow myself. It's about maybe $2,000 for me and my budget. Now, for some people, $2,000 is different than $2,000 is for me. But I just bought a card a couple of days ago that I'm going to do an entire video about one card. I've never done that. But it's a very, very special card to me. It's a very meaningful card to me. It's a card I've been searching for 2 years for the right one. And it was right around $1,500. And I'm a little nervous because I've only seen pictures. And I think it's the most expensive card I've ever purchased that wasn't in person. So Whenever someone asks me for advice, I try to say what I would do or what I have done. And what I have done is not spent much more than $1,500 on a card without holding it and seeing it in person first. My Walter Johnson, both of them I've seen in person. My Ernie Banks rookie, my Ty Cobb, my Cy Young. Most of my top 10, my Sandy Koufax rookie, most of my top 10, I held them in person before I bought them. So it's a great question. Does that mean that's the right answer? No. But when you buy cards without seeing them in person, 20% of the time, you're going to get it in hand and go, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't notice that. The picture didn't really show that. And we can't avoid that by only buying them in person. But I also realize that many of us don't have that luxury of going to shows where we can make that happen. So my advice would be, if you're stretching what you're comfortable with, send a message to the seller or to the auction house. Ask questions. Does this card have a pinhole? Does this card have a crease? Does this card have a stain? What are the things about this card that are making it the grade that it is, so that you can try to get more information than just the information that the picture and the grade provides? It's a tough question, but for me, apparently my threshold is about $1,500 because that's the most I've ever spent without having it in my hands when I bought it.
This one says, being my age, I wanted to grade some vintage cards so my wife would have a better idea of the worth. I hesitate because of the current state of grading, including the shipping process. Would I be better off grading myself to the best of my abilities and put a number on them as an indicator? Example, if I have a 69 NBA wilt is between a 6 and a 7. Thanks in advance.
I totally understand. I 100% understand. And this is one of the biggest disappointments that a lot of us have about not knowing the future of Beckett grading and SGC grading, is we don't know what to do anymore. You know, PSA has certainly takes their time getting their cards back to you. They upcharge you if it's a big card. And it feels like the consistency is not what the consistency should be. Now, where does that leave us? It leaves us in a tough spot. And you are describing the tough spot. Some of us just want to get them protected. We just want to get a grade that provides an approximate condition, so that when somebody ends up with these cards, because let's face it, I mean, my daughter said to me the other day, you know, Dad, someday these cards, you don't expect us to keep them, right? And I'm like, no, I don't expect you to keep them. Absolutely sell them. But if she goes down to the local card shop and tries to sell them, that's not going to be good. So I have a couple of opinions, and take it for what it's worth. First opinion is, I still consider SGC a viable option. It's not the same option that it was a couple of years ago, but it does encapsulate them. It protects them. It gives a fairly accurate evaluation of the quality of the card. And it's a legacy brand that I believe, even if they shut down tomorrow on the 1st of 2026, if they shut down tomorrow, I think a lot of collectors would continue to respect the brand and continue to respect the grade and continue to respect the holder, because they didn't go out from a scandal. They went out because Pac-Man came and gobbled them up. That's different, you know? And I've talked a little bit about that before. So I guess my response is I would still consider sending cards to SGC. I sent a submission to SGC on Saturday. I mailed off a submission to SGC. It was only like 5 or 6 cards, but I sent. So I'm still willing to send to SGC, and I know that I am because I just did. So that's an option. Here's another option. And this is where some of you are going to have potentially an issue with what I'm about to say. And that's okay. I have certain people that I trust. I have certain people in the card community, having gotten to know a lot of people. There are a lot of people that I've gotten to know in the community. Dealers, auction houses, collectors, buyers, a little bit of everything. And there are some people, that guy is a straight up stand-up guy. And that guy, maybe not so much. There are some people that I trust with my stuff when I'm gone. So I'll give you an example. And I'm going to preface this right now. First, one thing, I am sponsored by CIA Auctions, Collector Investor Auctions. I am sponsored by them. I am good friends with my buddy Theo, Clemente Collector. One option that I believe is to leave contact information to your loved ones, to your heirs, to contact Theo. And Theo will take care of your stuff and your heirs. Theo will send cards in for grading before putting them up for auction if that's what's in the best interest of those cards. And the cards that aren't, he'll put in lots, he'll sell them raw. I believe he'll take care of your family members. So one thing I would consider doing is I would consider leaving Theo's information so that they have a point person to know that they're going to be taken care of and not ripped off. And I also believe that Theo would potentially give a fair evaluation, because I've seen him do that with people, and offer to just purchase the cards outright for CIA. And he's going to offer a fair amount. That's one option. Another option is, and again, I have to preface it, another sponsor of mine, a sponsor on my Sports Card Clubhouse channel, who sponsors my Surface Issues episode with my buddy Mike Junkwax Hero and myself, is Chris Sewell. Chris Sewell's a really good guy. A really good guy. I trust Chris. Chris is going to come in, and Chris will not try to take advantage of anyone. So in my humble opinion, if you left Chris Sewell's information and you said, hey, if I pass away and the cards aren't graded, or they are graded, contact this guy. He's going to be fair. That would be another option. A final option I would throw out there is put them in contact with somebody that you trust in the community, besides Theo, besides Chris. If you want to leave them my name and contact information, I could help guide them through the process. I could help. I'm offering to you. If somebody is out there and goes, I don't know what to do when my cards, when I go, to make sure that the local card shop doesn't take advantage of my wife or my children, you can put them in contact with me, and I can help guide them through the process. The point I'm trying to get at is putting them in contact with somebody that you trust. If you want a dealer who you trust, who I trust at least, I trust Chris Sewell. If you want the cards to go up for auction, I trust Theo, and I trust the people at CIA Auctions. I do. Otherwise, I would not be in partnership with them. See, I don't just go. I've had more companies offer me money than I have agreed to participate with because I didn't get the right feeling. But I trust CIA. I trust Theo. I trust Chris Sewell. But if you want an independent person who is just going to help guide them through and navigate through and not get taken advantage of, you're welcome to provide them with my contact information, and I would be happy to help guide them through the process. Those are a few options, but as things stand right now on the last day of 2025, I still trust sending cards to SGC, and the way I can prove that to you is I just sent some cards in.
Collectors buying SGC was definitely a minimize the competition move. Beckett purchase is not the same. SGC was growing and thriving. Beckett has not been growing. Beckett has several things SGC didn't have, like auto authentication, a marketplace, and a legacy brand with extensive value. The other graders gaining market share at the fastest rate have been TAG and CGC. The true reason for the Beckett acquisition will likely come to light in 2026. If it was to eliminate a competitor, that just doesn't make sense based on Beckett's recent results. What do you think about this? Thanks for the video.
This is going to be a little bit of a difficult one for me to respond because I have been told some things in confidence that I know to be true that may not aren't how do I say this? Okay. I'd say it this way. I know for a fact that there were two main reasons why PSA, why Collectors, the parent company of PSA, acquired SGC. A big chunk of it was to block somebody else from purchasing them, infusing money into them, and helping them to be a legitimate competitor to PSA. The second reason is they were struggling to find quality graders, and SGC clearly had quality graders. So by acquiring the company, they then controlled the graders, and they prevented somebody else from buying them, infusing money into them, and helping them to become a legitimate competitor head-to-head with PSA. If Fanatics had bought SGC, they could have quickly become a legitimate competitor to PSA if they had bought SGC and put some money into them. They could have. So by Collectors buying them, it prevented that threat, and it got them a bunch of graders. And like I mentioned earlier in the episode, a lot of those graders, they've lured over to start grading in the PSA label, which is a big part of the reason that the SGC turnaround time has gone down so much, is because they have fewer quality graders, because many of them are now grading under the PSA label in Florida. I believe that that's part of the reason, a big part of the reason that they went after Beckett. The other thing about Beckett is Beckett has a brand recognition, a name recognition that has value, that they could potentially do things to resurrect. I mean, let me give you an example. PWCC was a marketplace and an auction house to buy and sell cards. And they were literally going under. And then Fanatics bought them. And now Fanatics turned that fledgling, dying marketplace into a significant Fanatics marketplace. that has big time auctions with big time cards, with tons of cards for sale. They took this dying company, rebranded it, infused money and expertise into it, and now they are a major player in the marketplace for buying and selling cards. If they could do that to PWCC, couldn't they do that to Beckett? Couldn't they do that to SGC? Fanatics has the power, the strength, the ability, the deep pockets, the expertise to turn a fledgling company into a serious competitor with all of the biggest players in that marketplace. They've done it. I believe that they, wanted to block somebody like Fanatics from coming in. B, wanted to acquire some graders. C, acquire the assets of what Beckett has to assess them and see what is salvageable, what has potential. But I think it was mostly a block and an acquisition of graders. But I also think, and again, you're asking my opinion. Let me again remind you, everything I say on Wednesdays is simply, everything I say every day is just opinion. Not a ton of this is fact. It's opinion. Some of you think my opinions are crazy. Some of you think my opinions are good. If you think they're crazy, not sure why you're still listening, but unless it's just for sheer, grudge watching. I believe that the parent company of PSA Collectors is planning on going public in the next couple of years. I think that they are going to try to go from rich to crazy rich. And the way you go from rich to crazy rich is you take a company that is a private company, you restructure them, you make some acquisitions, you eliminate the competition, you up the bottom line, and then you take them public. And they have become, it is a textbook, do this, then do this, then do this, then do this before going public. I think that this was one of the last moves that they felt like they needed to do before they could go public and get really rich. That's what I think. Am I crazy? Maybe. But that's what I think.
This one says, hey, great video. Watched the whole thing even at work. I'm also, like most who watch, have all vintage, all slabbed in SGC. I have every Hall of Fame baseball player's rookie card from 1960 to present. I also have a lot of 50s as well, but still working on these since they can be pricey. I'm more of a collector, but will sell to buy other rookies. I do want my cards to be protected and hold some value to hand down to my kids. Should I stop with SGC submissions? Will SGC cards even have value to Raw in 20 years? Would love your feedback.
There's a little bit of overlap with this question and some of the previous questions, and I thought about kind of combining them, but there's enough meat on the bone here to make it its own question, so I do want to share a couple of thoughts. Sort of like I said earlier, when there is a brand that goes away because the product is not good, that is different than a brand that goes away because they got purchased out and absorbed by another company. So I do believe that if we go 20, 30 years down the road, there will be some people coming into the hobby going, SGC, who's that? And people go, oh, that's a company who used to grade a long time ago. They're not around anymore. And the young collectors who are so obsessed with PSA 10s and have always looked down on SGC cards, because SGC graded cards, because they're obsessed with PSA 10s, because That's what Jeff told them to do. Well, what happens to those people is in 20 or 30 years, I could see there being a depressed market for cards and SGC holders. But SGC is different and Beckett is different than some brands. And I'm trying to think of a good example without offending anyone. Saturn was a car company. Their cars were okay. People didn't really want them because they'd rather have a Honda or a Toyota. They went away because people didn't really want the product. That's different than if Toyota bought Saturn and then turned all of the Saturn plants into Toyota plants. That would be different. One goes away because the product isn't that great. There are restaurants in your town that went out of business. And they went out of business because the food wasn't very good. There are other restaurants or coffee shops in your town that went away because a bigger business bought them and turned them into their business. That doesn't mean that their pizza wasn't good because, well, see, here's the problem. I'm about to use a pizza company that I think is a regional pizza company. What would an example be here? The local hair salon shop didn't go out of business because they don't give good haircuts. They went out of business because Supercuts. Is Supercuts a national brand? I don't know. Let's say it's a national brand for just a minute. If you've never heard of them, pretend that you've heard of them. Great Clips, Supercuts. They have those out here. I don't know what they have in other places like Maine. Maine is basically part of Canada, isn't it, Mike? Okay, so carrying on. If Supercuts bought out the local barber shop, that doesn't mean that the local barber shop didn't give good haircuts. It didn't go out of business because they didn't give good haircuts. It went out of business because they got bought out by a major chain. Those are different things. I think SGC, if they go away, if it's different than some of the other grading companies that have gone away because they just didn't do a very good job. That's my take. I'm still sending to SGC. I'm still buying cards in SGC holders, but I ain't going to lie. If I've got two cards in front of me and one of them's in a PSA holder and one of them's in an SGC holder, I am personally much more comfortable buying the card in the PSA holder. Does that make me a bad person for saying that? I don't know. I don't think I'm a bad person. I think I'm actually a pretty good guy. I think I'm a pretty nice, good person. But I feel more comfortable buying a big card in a PSA holder than an SGC holder. But I'm still sending cards to SGC. I'm still buying cards in both holders. But it feels a little safer if it's in a PSA holder. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's where we are. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Be safe out there tonight. I enjoyed 2025, and I thank all of you for your contributions. If you'd like to contribute to the first Q&A episode of 2026, down below in the comments, simply type out your question. I'm looking forward to another good year. 2026 to infinity and beyond. Off we go into the wild blue yonder. MidLife Nation, it's as strong as ever.